Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. And joining me typically would be the man himself, the governor of the great state of Texas, Mr. Michael Becker, but he is on another due diligence assignment. So it is just myself at the helm today of the podcast. Don't forget, if you find value in our podcast, go on to the oldcapitalpodcast.com website and download the 17-page white paper report on Multifamily 101. It's a great kind of a checklist of things that you should be thinking about if you're thinking about buying a multifamily property in the future, and maybe some of the changes that have gone on with multifamily that you need to be aware of, and so that you can understand how these transactions are put together. So go on to the Old Capital podcast.com and join us on that. I think you'll find a tremendous amount of value in that piece. Also, too, Michael Becker's due diligence report will be in there too, so you want to download that too. So, in the podcast today, we have, I don't know if you've heard her voice before, but it is Julie Peterson. And if you haven't heard of Julie, she's definitely a fireball, and she's highly visible on social media. So get to know her. She finds solutions for borrowers. You want to visit with her and find out what Old Capital can do for you. So Julie is our co-presenter today. So Julie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Fantastic. So let us introduce our guest. And these are clients of Julie that she's recently closed a transaction with. Fortunately, I think we're fortuitous that she was able to close this before the coronavirus. And so they're going to talk a little bit about inheriting a property, buying a property after right before this whole coronavirus started. So I'm anxious to hear a little bit more about what these guys have done. So first time sponsors Gary Van Bortel and John Belinsky purchased a small apartment building in Syracuse, New York earlier this year. Syracuse is in upper state New York. Yes, it's the Erie Canal, state capital of New York and home of Syracuse University. The general Syracuse area has a population around 700,000 people. And so today we visit with Gary and Jen and talk a little bit about their journey and how they purchased their first property. I think you'll like this one. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So let me throw it over to Julie and let's begin our conversation.
Thank you, Paul. This is great to be in the podcast. I'm so excited. We've worked really hard, John and Gary, to close this. So welcome you to the podcast as well. So, we do know that there's a lot of multifamily in Texas, and I am here to tell you that there is life outside of Texas. And so you guys being in upstate New York, how's the weather? Has spring sprung?
We've had a few days now, and 60s are supposed to be hitting maybe 80 next week.
So you guys are in your bathing suits, I'm sure, right?
2 weeks ago we had snow yet, so it's ever changing up here.
Don't put the skis away yet.
That's for sure.
So Gary and John, what do you do for a living? Gary, we'll start out with you first.
Okay, I am an engineer for a large bank that is primarily headquartered up in Buffalo, New York, and has branches throughout the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Washington. So.
Wow, that's great. Do you travel with that, Gary?
No, I don't. I actually work at home most of the time. So being an engineer, I've got access to the network just about anywhere I can be. So it's,
nice.
It's good in that respect.
And great for coronavirus. So your office is
absolutely
fine, right?
My office is right here. Yeah.
Great. How about you, John? What do you do?
I work for a HVAC mechanical contractor here in Rochester, New York. It's one of the largest in our area. And I work in the industry of refrigeration and heating and cooling and stuff like that. So it's good for the background of due diligence. Definitely
Right. How did you guys meet each other? How did you get this started, this partnership?
Well, we met through our national RIA group. We have meetings a couple of times a month, and John and I met through that.
And it was a instant partnership.
We were just talking the same tune. We both were part of a mentorship program and the same one, as a matter of fact. And
That's
we
pretty
just were
ironic.
talking commercial apartments, and
Yeah. Well, part of it too was Gary and me both went to training at different times. But when I came back from mine, which was after his, we kind of connected, and I think it was a big relief to his wife because he could talk to me and not have to bore her with all the lingo in our business, and we were able to kind of help each other kind of work through some of the learning curve at the beginning. So it was nice to kind of have someone else I could talk to.
Yeah, so
That worked out well.
unlike the sports, you guys were speaking multifamily, so your wives
right.
are.
I was taking my wife on showings. I think I took her on 2 or 3, and she had about had enough. You know, I was, come on, put on your best looking, you know, clothes and jewelry. We got to go look like we've got a lot of money, and
Yeah, there you go.
sit down and impress these people. And so it was great to have John and I go together now. We were both, you know, more engaged in the process.
Now, did you own any multifamily in the past? Single family? What is your experience?
Yeah, we both do. I was up to 17 units. I just recently sold a couple this summer to kind of help raise some more funds for more apartment buildings, larger buildings, but I self-manage them, and I have for about 20 years. So I started before I was married, bought a couple, and then got married and bought a few more after that, and then went through a period of refinancing and buying even more. So I still have 13 of them now that I'm
Nice.
self-managed.
How about you, John?
I'm also single family homes. Was trying to do a little middle of the road, like not low class, but higher class houses, and was doing well with them, but then learned about big multifamily and pivoted on a dime. I was like, this is my future. And I stopped buying, and but I do manage my own properties. We do our own turnovers, but it's nice to look at bigger and better things. Definitely excited.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So your first time multifamily buyers, can you take us a little bit through how long the process was from the time that you found the deal to the time that you closed it? What was that? What was the time frame there?
It was just under a year. I believe we found the property in May or June of 2019, and we ended up closing in February, just about 10, 11 weeks ago. So yeah, it was just shy of a year, but we, you know, we ran into, you know, the holidays and stuff that kind of, you know, slowed things down a little bit for us. Yeah.
Sure. Can you tell us a little bit about the apartment? Why you liked this opportunity? Tell us how many units, what kind of area it's in?
Yeah, I think what Gary and me liked first about it was close enough for us to drive to it, being that it was, you know, within an hour of where we live. The other thing, the size of it was big, but not too big. I think 48 units, we both could see us handling without any too many complications. So we felt comfortable with the two things, that the location and size was really the attractive. My family actually, my family actually comes from the area this apartment's in, and 2 blocks away, my grandparents lived for about 50 years. So I actually was very familiar with the area. Gary was the first time I ever saw it, but it was for me, it was a very comfortable place to go to. I knew it was a good area, and it had some very good high value there for us to go into. And Gary, I don't know what your thoughts were you want to throw on there, but I know you were kind of like just listening to what I had to say because you weren't too sure about the area at the time.
Yeah, well, I didn't know Syracuse very well. I spent a lot of time in Buffalo, which is west of Rochester, which is primarily where we're from. I've been out there for, you know, sporting events, but not really familiar with the area. So it is a great area. We're very happy with where we purchased it from. It is a 48 unit, and it's you know, it's in a pretty vibrant part of town. It's got some culture to it, so we really enjoy that. Yeah, it's pretty cool area. Everyone that we've brought through the property is just like, hey, you guys found a nice gem here, you know, in this part of the town. So it makes us feel really good when we hear those things.
Yeah. Now, guys, there's always challenges, right? I mean, any kind of deal that you get in, whether it's single family or multifamily, there's always some challenges. And for our folks that are listening here today with us, can you take us through a couple of the challenges, things that you maybe didn't see, maybe from start to finish, a couple, maybe 3 or 4 challenges that you could share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. We've certainly seen quite a few challenges. We've keep pushing through. I would say John is very good at that. I know at a few times I've taken a look back and, you know, questioned if we should continue on. I'm so glad we did, but we certainly ran into some. I would say one of the first things that we ran into was that the property was originally owned by a syndicator himself, who got himself into a little bit of trouble, um, and he was actually indicted on like 45 counts of charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud and money laundering. So it was unfortunately, it was our attorney and title companies were just telling us, just don't get involved with this property,
Yeah.
just because you just don't know, what's going to happen and how it's going to play out. We persevered through and are very glad we did. Absolutely, this guy really wasn't, he didn't really harm anybody. All of his investors were paid back. I think it was a lot of an unfortunate situation for him. But that was one of the first challenges we ran into. Our attorney said, go find another property. We said, but we like this one.
Yeah, and we really, we knew that up front, right? And we engaged a lender, and they were right on board with us, knew the situation, and they were happy to walk that path with us until this thing got real. Was it really going to happen? And we had some challenges in that. That's another thing that maybe you can talk about, Gary or John, about the weeks that we were ready to. You guys got the PSA in place, and what happened?
Well, the first thing, we had a hard time finding title insurance. That was a big challenge, and there was nothing stopping any of the title companies from issuing it. They were just nervous because if the property was, for some reason taken back or taken over, by, whoever was maybe out money, that we might be out the property, but still, own it. And the title company didn't, they didn't want to fight that battle. We did find title policy on it after kind of a little time passed, maybe a month, things cooled down. So another area where we kind of persevered, we just kept pushing on, and
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then our original Freddie lender said, yeah, we're not gonna, originally they had said that we were going to go ahead and partner on this. And then when we had the PSA and we were ready to go down that lane with them, they said, no, we're not going to do that. So we chose another guy, and he walked us through this, and we were very, very lucky to go through that challenge.
Julie to the rescue. You made that smooth transition. You called us up, and in one phone call, it was like, hey guys, got some bad news for you, the Freddie lender. And I think it was because they had experience with either, the syndicator or the property. We weren't really unsure, but they just didn't want to go that route with us. And the next thing, you're like, don't worry, guys, I got you covered. I got another lender. So that was, really not much of a issue for us. You made that transition seamless for us. So that was great.
Yeah, that was great. So we're going along. We're ready to put the final touches on it. And what happens with the property manager? That you have made a great relationship with your property manager and really set him up with all the details. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that part, I tell you, was a little frustrating because we met this guy early on because his property deal was such a long period of time between when we first looked and when we bought it. We reached out early on, met some property managers, and this guy was actually a block away from our property. He owned a lot of properties, dealt with a lot of properties in our area, knew the neighborhood like the back of his hand, and he was reaching out to us like on a regular basis, trying to make sure if we need anything, if there's, something happened in the neighborhood, he'd let us know about it. So we felt like this guy was really connected to our neighborhood, and he was really hungry to get our business. At the point of we were done with looking for property management. Then the lender came back and said, sorry guys, he's not big enough for what we want to see, and you have to go back and find somebody else. And I think at this point, we were close to a point where we needed to have a lender in place, or a property management in place. So we were kind of scrambling because we knew the other ones we looked at we weren't very happy with. So we had to go find some more, because we weren't going to hire somebody we weren't happy with just to satisfy the lender. We wanted to find somebody we could work with and grow with and hopefully have a long relationship with. But I think in the end, it worked out. I think we found a couple more property managers. The one we ended up with, I think is more in line with what we're doing and has a good company around him. And has definitely a good reputation in the neighborhood. So it might have worked out better in the end, but it was very frustrating when we were told, no, you can't have what you want, guys, sorry.
Yeah, and probably, looking back now, and talking to some of our listeners, that to keep in mind when you are looking for a property manager, to make sure that you're looking at a property manager that is managing the same, if not more, of the same type of asset that you're looking at to purchase. Sounded like, as I recall, this property manager was more doing single family assets as opposed to larger multifamily. So keep that in mind moving forward for our listeners. I think it's really important. So we're in the due diligence time. We chose to do it at right around Thanksgiving, or was it Christmas? Oh wait, was it New Year's? No, it's Valentine's Day. We hit them all, didn't we?
We did.
The trifecta.
Oh my goodness. And doing the due diligence, we also found the asbestos. And, typically we just want to keep it quiet. Not, we just don't want to touch it, right? I mean, that's typically the way that we move forward with asbestos. We just don't want to mess with it. But you guys,
how old is this property?
We got a couple of different reports on it, but I believe it's 1950.
Okay, so asbestos was normal to have in a property in 1950, whether it was in the ceiling tiles or the flooring tiles or in some of the paint or somewhere on the property. So the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s had asbestos on property. So that is not unusual, but let's keep going with the story, Julie.
so we found it, everybody knew it. It's this age of property, but Gary and John, you addressed it with the owner, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we were actually quite almost done with the due diligence process. So, and we had been back to the owner and had gotten a couple of concessions from him. He was a great guy to work with, and this was kind of a big find. And we were probably, I think we were right at like 2 or 3 days before our due diligence period was to end. And John and I were discussing it and realized that this was definitely something we needed to look into. We did request an extension, which he granted us, to take another look at it, to get some contractors in there. And where we found it, most of the property was remediated, such as the pipes in the walls or wherever else. This was actually the flooring in the hallways, and that's it. The common areas it was like 2 layers of carpet, which we saw was a big issue when we wanted to spruce the place up and make it much nicer. But underneath that carpet are these 6x6 tiles that are very famous for being of that. So we had it tested, and it came back, both the tile and the, it does have the asbestos in it. Nothing in the walls. There's no, nothing else to be concerned of, but it is, there's 2 buildings and 4 floors each. So there's quite a bit of space there. So we did, request a little more time from the seller to look into it and come up with some numbers on it. And then we had a conversation with him about, possibly, a reduction in price. And again, we were like, I think this was probably the 2nd or 3rd time we had come back to the seller. So we were, a little uneasy about, we didn't want to lose the deal. We decided that, will we continue to move forward if he just says, I've had enough? Fortunately, the seller was fantastic. He kind of met us in the middle, which we were happy with. That's kind of what our expectation was. It's a big dollar amount because you've got to do the abatement process is quite involved.
Mm-hmm.
But
Tell me a little bit about that. What was your concern with the asbestos, and what was the cost that you were finding out that it would take to abate this?
so
Well,
go ahead, John.
I think the issue was that we both knew if we bought this property, we were going to upgrade the hallways because of issues of the carpeting looked terrible. And you couldn't remove the carpet without affecting the asbestos tile.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to address that issue in order to do the upgrades we wanted to do. So we knew this had to be a deal that we had to make this happen to make this deal work for us. So we started investigating into different remediation companies, got different quotes, and luckily came back with numbers that were not too crazy because, of course, going into it, me and Gary are thinking of all these numbers. It could be, $200, $300, $400,000. And if it was, there's no way we could make this deal happen. Finding the right large abatement company that was able to give us a good price kept it below $100,000. When we went back to the owner, let me step back one step. One thing I was thinking about too, when this all happened, me and Gary are both got the prices and we're both like, we can't make this work if he doesn't come down in price.
Mm-hmm.
We were both stressed about it. But what happened was we reached out to another syndicator that we know and talked to him. And he had some good suggestions to us, like, you guys got to look at this in the right mindset. When you have an issue like this, you can't go to the owner with the problem. You got to go to the owner with the fix. You got to come with the right attitude and work with him and give him something that's not going to make his life worse, but how you're going to help make it better. And I think it helped me and Gary put our hats on the right way and talk to him in a way that I think was more positive. He met us halfway on the price on the remediation, which we were very thankful with, which helped us, make that decision very easy for us to move forward. So without doing those things, I think, we were both ready to just kind of give up a little bit at that point because we figured it was just not going to happen. But I think that advice from our friend was very helpful at the time we talked to him right before. So,
well, that was timely and well chosen advice from your friend who was the other syndicator about trying to propose a solution to the seller to scare them up a little bit that this property does have asbestos and this could be a major problem for you down the road, even if we didn't buy it. And
correct.
then would give them a solution how they can sell this property, and this is the way that we're going to remediate it. This is what it's going to cost us. And remember, on these properties that do have asbestos, I mean, there are, EPA issues on properties that let's say you have a wall board that's full of asbestos and that gets wet, and you've got to replace that. It's the guys in the white suits with the respirators that come in to replace it. It's not just a normal worker that comes in to do it. So there are additional costs if you do have a property. And then also typically you have a lead-based paint and it's called an operating manual that also features asbestos in that and how to take care of that in case you do it. And you usually typically get that from the lender, and they give you, it's probably about a 120-page report that talks a little bit about, in the future, if you do run into a problem, this is how you mitigate it. So very good advice from your friend. Keep going, Julie.
So the next thing I wanted to just reach out, and we talked about being new to multifamily, not having experience in multifamily. So we were thinking about taking the Freddie lane that says if you live close by, we'll do, Freddie will consider you with a third-party property management company. But our lender was so wonderful. We were able to take it onto Fannie, and we were also able to get you more loan dollars, which, we didn't know until the very end that we were going to be able to get the larger loan amount on a Fannie. So I think that, being typically new investors like yourself don't normally get to have a Fannie product. So I think that we were really excited about that. We could offer that to you.
I think we did very well, Julie. being the first time through, I'm not sure that we quite understand how well we did, but we're very happy at the end with the terms of the financing. So that was terrific. Like you say, we are basically unexperienced multifamily owners, so they generally don't give you all the things I think that we were able to get. So it worked out very well for us.
Yeah, and I think the interest rate came in lower too than what we had anticipated. So that all ended up so positively in the end.
Yeah, there was like, it must have been a matter of days or a week where the market fell out at the time where the COVID news came about, and it caused our rate to drop surprisingly very well in the right direction for us, and it was like right after we closed, it went right back up. So we're very happy with that.
Yeah, and when we work with Freddie loans, they're going to lock in the day that you sign your application. And being in that we were going on a Freddie, or on a Fannie rather, it took us a little bit of time to get that underwritten and approved and get the sheet, the commitment from them. And it was actually to our benefit. So that all worked out really, really well. And I want to switch to, how did you put this together? Where did you come up with the capital? How did you, tell me a little bit about that experience.
Well, I think both Gary and me went into this being taught. You go to your family and friends and connections that you have to raise money. And we both kind of looked at each other at the time we got together, really started working on this stuff, that we knew that probably wasn't going to be our source of raising capital. And we realized we had to do something else. We knew some other people that were doing local meetups in the areas that we're in. And we thought that would be maybe our best way to attack this and try to get connected to people. We really weren't sure what was going to come out of it, but we figured, let's go do it. The worst thing's going to come out of it, we're going to probably learn a lot about what we're doing, because we're going to have to educate other people. And our plan was to just kind of talk about syndication, the basics of it, and what it takes to buy a property, and the due diligence, and going through it step by step. But I think right away we saw that we were getting a lot of traction especially with local RIA members that knew us. We're bringing in other people, and our group grew pretty quickly for us. I think we were happy to see, I think, over 50 people within the first 2 or 3 months. And we were getting probably an average about 22 to 25 people per meeting showing up, which, we expect to have like 5. And at the end of the day, when we were looking back, we're both kind of shaking our heads like, what did we do? Why are they so excited about this? But, we were glad. And that really where our main base of our investors came out of our meetup, being able to kind of bring them along the trip with us, educate them, show them what we're doing. And when the point came to raise the capital, they were already kind of prepped on the deal. So it wasn't a lot of hard work to sell them on. It was just kind of logistics and making them comfortable that we were going to do a good job for them. I think that was the only thing at the end we had to really work through. Gary, I'm sure you want to add something to that.
Well, we just try to be open and transparent. We lay it all out. We're both local. We put our names and addresses on our offering memorandum. If you can see, we're not going anywhere. We're both family guys with with our kids. And so I think building that trust and having the in-person meetings, we tried to educate as much as we could. We do some networking. We put together a little presentation so they get something out of it. We also threw in a little mixer, so we
yeah, I was going to talk about that.
That was John's idea.
You had them signing. Was that before the 2 beers, or was it after the 2 beers?
Whatever it took.
Our wives were already thrilled that we were gone so much, because we do go to the RIA meetings quite frequently, and then we started our own, and then we're like, well, now we're going to have a mixer. So we go out to John kind of came up with this. We find a local brewery. We've got a lot of them in the area, and we try a different one each time. And many people are really happy doing that. So it's get a couple of beers in them and start talking real estate. So
that's great.
But yeah, we were very happy with the outcome. We've actually branched out to the next city now. We're kind of going east and west. And just before all this started, we were, doing that quite a bit more, but now it's Zoom meetings.
Yes, right. So you took over in February. What have you done? What is actually, I think it was the second day something happened, or was it the third day? Tell us about, you showed up there one day, and was it the boiler?
Okay. Yeah, this is my part, right, Gary?
Yes, it
So
is.
we were actually there it might have been a couple weekends in from owning the property. We were there doing work. Me and Gary go there on a Saturday and just try to get some things accomplished. And the interesting part was we were about to leave, and we're driving down the road, and I go, Gary, let's stop. I got to measure one more thing for a sign and this and that. And while I was there, our property super showed up and saw Gary sitting in the truck, and he goes, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" We're like, "Well, we're just leaving." He goes, "The boiler's down." We're like, "We've been here all day. Nobody said anything." He goes, "Yeah, it's down." So long story short, it was a broken part on it. It was a Saturday night. It was actually the night before. It was Sunday was Easter. And being that I have the background in mechanical systems and buying parts and this and that, I was able to actually open up a wholesale house to get me a motor and replace the motor while we're there and get it up and running. So we didn't have to spend, $1,000 to have some other contractor come in and do it. We had to just pay the cost of the parts for us. So it kind of saved us a little bit of money there.
That is such a great story. I love it. Now let's talk about COVID. Yeah, we're doing Zoom calls, but how is it affecting you and the building? What have you experienced? What is the business, the building experienced? Man, you got thrown into this quickly.
Yeah, right after we closed. So we haven't owned it long, and the seemed like the world turned upside down on us. Um, so March was our first month of rent collections. It went pretty well. April, we started seeing some issues, and going into May. So it's a variety. It's not really one thing you can say that, we've got some tenants that haven't seemed to figure out how they're going to pay their rent. Their unemployment hasn't come through, or for whatever reason. So we do have a couple of tenants occupying the apartments that unfortunately we can't do anything about. And we've also had some challenges. Our property management company, although they are working as quite well, they're pushing as best they can, they are under certain restrictions as well, such as showing the places and trying to
Right.
maintain the social distancing. So showing the places has been a little bit of a challenge for them. So but we're making it through, and we have a terrific leasing agent. She's doing a really good job. But yeah, we've got tenants that are, just having difficulty paying, and we're just going to have to ride it out. There's not much we can do.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that many of them will come around when they get their finances together. But yeah, trying to show the units as well as some rent collections are probably a little lower than what we'd like.
We're also
challenging.
dealing with the governor telling tenants they don't have to pay until the end of August. So people, they hear that, they think they don't have to pay at all.
Yeah.
And of course, the property manager has to work even harder now because they have to educate them on, no, you do have to pay, but you can not pay for the next few months, but you have to pay it back later. And they don't understand. They think they can get out free. So they have to work with these people that weren't paying and to kind of remind them, no, this is the law. This is what's going to happen. Yes, you can get away with it for now, but you're going to be paying it later. And I think that put a lot more burden on them too, because some people don't answer their phones and some people don't answer their doors, and they still need to get a hold of them. So that part has been kind of rough, because we know that can make things a lot worse, a lot quicker. Money's being owed, and it seems to be growing at this point.
Yeah. But you're sleeping at night, and that's good, right?
I am.
Yeah,
I don't know if Gary is, though.
Well,
So-
I kind of tend to get into the numbers a little more.
Yeah.
Being the engineer and on the computer, I'm looking at things a lot, looking at the delinquency reports and the bills and the work orders and whatnot. So we're trying to not do the property manager's job for them, but it's hard for us. We're both very hands-on people. So it's like John was saying, we're there about every Saturday lately. We've got other projects outside of what the property manager is doing to improve the property that we're kind of undertaking ourselves. So we've been there quite a bit ourselves.
So if you were to want someone to know about your experience that you've just shared, what is there one thing or two things that you wish you knew before getting into this transaction and going through it that you would want other people to know, so that they don't have to go through it?
Well,
Go ahead,
I would throw out that it's, make sure you engage, if you're going to use an SEC attorney, to engage them right up front. We didn't realize until later on that, attorneys generally get paid at closing. So, we're like, well, let's not spend any money yet until we're through our due diligence and we're sure we're going to get this property. And when we reached out to him, he's like, hey guys, I can get your private placement memorandum at any time. I get paid at closing. And we wish we had started a little sooner, because by the time you get that put together, and we put it together so that we could utilize DocuSign, it kind of delayed our ability to start actually putting money in the bank and getting our investors to give us the their investment for probably a couple of weeks. We could have gotten a little more head start on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good point. John?
Yeah, I think the other thing too we talked about was getting the financial started earlier. I think we waited a little bit, a few weeks later than we should have, getting all of our documents over to them, getting things started, because that process can be longer. And of course, like you mentioned earlier, we were going into the holiday season, and every week made a difference. And if we would have probably got there 2 weeks earlier, we probably would have closed earlier too, and that really hurt us, I think. But we were just being super careful on everything we were doing. We wanted to make sure we were 100%. And unfortunately, it kind of held us back and things. And now looking back, it was, we wouldn't do that again. We'd definitely be ahead of the game on that. So listen to your lenders, hopefully get things in place early, and don't be afraid to move forward. You got people around you that should know what they're doing and give you good support behind it.
Great,
so that'd be my suggestion.
Great information, John and Gary. So nice to have you here. What's next? Anything? What's on the forefront?
Bigger properties. We're definitely going to we are looking for larger properties at this point. We haven't stopped. Things have kind of slowed down a little bit, but I would say, right now our unit size would probably be double what we've gotten into right now. I mean, I think the work is just the same. So we would definitely pushing on and finding the next property.
Everybody has challenged. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I add on to that real quick? The other thing too we're trying to do is me and Gary want to grow, and we look at the possibility of finding bigger properties and having to raise larger capital. We're also looking for another partner, in a sense that might bring another strength to our group, that we can actually do bigger deals and be quicker at it and have better resources. So between finding a property and finding a partner, those are two things that we're really focused on at this point.
Everybody has challenges in doing their first deal or their second deal or their 10th deal, but this is a business of people, and sometimes people find things that are pretty damn funny when they're going through these exercises. So my question to you guys is, what did you find funny going through this exercise?
Well, I've got a quick little story here. I did run into a situation. We were doing our due diligence. John and I managed to get through the property a couple of times, looking at the different units. We went through each one probably 3 times. One of the times we were focusing on just checking the water pressure, the drains, and all the bathrooms and the sinks and whatnot. So we went into each unit and knocked on the door and went in. And this one unit we went into, the lady was like, yeah, sure, come on in. She was friendly and all, and invited us right on in. And I think John went to check out the kitchen faucet, and she pointed me right over to the bathroom, and said, go right in there, help yourself. And surprisingly enough, there was a gentleman in there taking a bath. I was just stopped in my tracks, and he's like, oh no, come on in, check. No, it's okay. I'll take your word, it's just fine. So I don't know. So now we're very cautious about just barging into bathrooms, especially I am at this point. So that was kind of
I learned
not
quick
real
to let
funny at the
Gary go
time.
first.
Gary,
Yeah.
please go first. I like that one.
Exactly.
So if people want to get more information about you guys and what you do, what's the best or easiest way for them to get a hold of you?
So we've got a group partnership that John and I have formed, and we've got a website. It's ROC Capital Group, and our website is www.roccapitalgroup.com. ROC is short for Rochester. Everything is rock up here, rock this.
Oh.
So rockcapitalgroup.com is our website. Go on there, you can learn all about us, and we've got lots of good information on there to share with you.
Gary, John, what a great story of acquiring your first property. And I agree, being cautious is typically the way to do it, especially your first one, because you don't know what the hell you're doing. You guys were pretty much holding each other's hands and making sure that you're not making the first mistake. That could be a very costly mistake. So, and I'm glad that the seller was able to hold on for you to be able to close this transaction. I know it sounded like a long journey to get there, but hey, you're there, and now you're going to take this as a stepping stone into your next larger transaction. Hopefully that'll be between 75 and 150 doors. So we wish you a lot of success. We appreciate your business. Julie, anything to add at the end here?
No, I'm just excited to get you guys into the next one. It's really exciting to watch your growth. So thank you for the opportunity to serve you in a financial way.
That's great. So that's great information from the guys, Gary and John. We appreciate you being on the Old Capital Podcast. On behalf of Julie Peterson, I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.